Hi, my name's Christina Bell, and I'd like to share with you today some different ways to deal with intense emotion. Now, let me first say that emotion gets a bad rap in our society. I think we tend to associate it with losing control or being weak in some kind of way. But emotions are really important because they give us access to our own information inside of our bodies, as well as helping us connect to other people. And at a primal level, emotions have actually evolved to help us be able to survive and avoid threats. So, we're going to be looking at ways to deal with intense emotions, and that's going to involve emotional regulation, which is the ability to bring our emotions into a tolerable level so they can actually help us move forward in our lives. Now, as a framework, we're going to use the window of tolerance by Dan Siegel, also popularized by trauma therapist Pat Ogden. Now, when we go throughout our day to day and we feel calm and alert and we can deal with emotion as it arises, we're in the window of tolerance. Now, if we experience something that's stressful or overwhelming, we can pop up into a place called hyperarousal, and that's also known as the fight or flight. Now, what is difficult is that for some of us that maybe haven't had a lot of good proper modeling of dealing with emotion or have been survivors of trauma, is we can spend too much time in this place of hyperarousal. And that can lead to problems with insomnia, and we can also use addictive processes to bring ourselves back down to a calmer place. So that hyperarousal, it's not a bad place, but we want to try to minimize the time we spend there because it can burn us out so quickly. Now on the other side at the bottom here, we have hypoarousal. And that's often when we feel overwhelmed by something, we can almost flip into another response where we feel numb and disconnected. And so in that place, we can be really numb to our feelings. So what emotional regulation does is it widens the window of tolerance or our capacity to feel. These are some of the characteristics of emotional regulation. So hyperarousal is when people tend to feel agitated or anxious, and it's difficult to think clearly. A regulated state, as I mentioned, was that calm and relaxed place. And hypoarousal is a place where people feel very numb and disconnected from themselves. Now, in terms of a plan for emotional regulation, the first step is taking care of yourself. So many issues can be avoided by proper self-care, which can just involve the basics like sleep, exercise, and nutrition. We're also going to talk about some strategies today that really can help with emotional regulation, and they're based on mindfulness, which is learning to be a compassionate observer to your inner experience. And then lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about where do we go from here? How do we start to make this a part of our own lives? Because practice is very important with dealing with emotions. So I can't stress enough the importance of self-care, and I often will ask my clients basic questions about their sleep and nutrition. We know that a lot of things can be prevented with proper self-care. So for example, they did one study with young women where they deprived them of sleep and all of them became depressed. So we know that if we're not getting proper nutrition or we're working too many hours, it can create a lot of issues in our lives. So these are my favorite tips under each of the different categories for dealing with self-care. And this alone can be a whole journey in itself. So it might be something that we might have to set a couple of goals for ourselves and continually try to work on. So when we move into that place of hyperarousal or that fight or flight, this is a really great strategy that can work when you feel like something has been set off and you need a break. The first thing we need to do is to be able to recognize when we're starting to leave the window of tolerance, so when we're starting to become activated. And often we can kind of track it in our body and pay attention to a certain body sign. So for example, one of my clients talks about a tightness that he has in his jaw that indicates that something's wrong for him. For me, I might notice that my breathing becomes more shallow. So part of recognizing it is being able to catch it before it escalates to a much bigger level and to be able to see it for what it is. Now, if you're getting really emotional and it's leaving the window of tolerance, oftentimes we do need to take a break and not say anything, not send an email. Often we're going to regret it afterwards. So if you feel really overwhelmed and upset, try to just leave what you're doing and engage in some healthy distraction. Don't make any big decisions, because what's happened is your body is dealing with stress hormones. It's going to take about 10 to 30 minutes for those hormones to level out again. So when you can come back to more of a calm and relaxed state in that window of tolerance. So if you are in a conversation with, say, with your spouse, agree to take a break and do something that's calming. If you listen, to Eye the Tiger and repeat all these, damaging statements about yourself or your partner, you're probably not going to be able to relax and come back into the window. So make sure that you do something relaxing and try to avoid things like driving or things that could be unsafe. And then lastly, we need to follow up and return to the situation or make a decision. And it's also a good time in this place to analyze, why did that happen? What was going on for me? So that we could look at doing something different the next time. So for example, if my husband and I always have an argument around, say, 4:35, it might be because we're hangry, hungry and angry, and we might need to have maybe a snack on our way home so we avoid that situation. If it keeps coming up again and again, like Groundhog Day, there's something that we need to learn about how to handle that situation differently. So this is a strategy called the 3 R's, and it stands for recognize, regulate, and return. The next one is called grounding, and there's a lot of good information on the internet about grounding. Grounding works really well for intense emotion as well as flashbacks if you're a sufferer of post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, when we are leaving the window of tolerance, it's really good if we can ground ourselves physically in the moment. So there are different things you can try, like feeling your feet on the ground or focusing on a sense like a sense of smell or labeling what you can see. So that alone can be a really great way of grounding. Another way you can ground yourself is by cognitively saying something to yourself. And this might sound really simple or a bit silly, but just to even say to yourself what your name is, what the date is, and just to remind yourself that I'm experiencing some intense emotion, I'm safe, this will pass, it will be okay. So that's called cognitive grounding or mental grounding. And you can also visualize a safe place in your mind or hold on to something relaxing, maybe like a special stone or a rabbit's foot, something that helps you to connect to the moment. So that's combining maybe a visual grounding with a physical grounding. So this works really well. And you can also insert this in the regulate part of the 3 R's as well. This is one of my favorite strategies for dealing with emotion, and it was put out there by Jack Kornfield. He's a meditation teacher and psychologist. Now this is really great because it's a way to explore your emotion when it's inside the window of tolerance. So really to go a bit deeper into processing it. So recognition is really about naming the emotions that you're feeling. So that alone can be really calming, because they did a study with people and they found that if they looked at a series of photos and saw someone that was emotional, say angry, and they were able to label that emotion, that the emotional part of their brain actually calmed down. So being able to name an emotion is really important. So if you just even do that, say, I'm really frustrated right now, or I'm really sad right now, that will help with regulating emotion. The next part is to accept our emotions, because so often we judge our emotions and we feel bad for how we feel, and it just makes it worse and prolongs the experience. So as much as we can, try to be accepting of our emotions and allow some space for them, and just to allow them to be there, even though they might not be convenient or they might not be what we want to be experiencing. The next one, the I, is about investigation. And this is really getting curious and almost like being your own psychologist and asking yourself, what is this emotion telling you? Where have you felt this way before? Is there an image coming to your mind? And really just getting curious and unpacking the emotion. And journaling is also a great outlet for this as well. And then the last one is about non-identification. And that's really about realizing that we are not our emotions, that our emotions are just a part of who we are, they're just a little snippet of our experience, but they don't define us. That alone can be helpful because when I'm feeling very emotional, just to remind myself that this will pass has a huge influence on how I deal with things. So this RAIN strategy is really, really good when you're dealing with emotions that you can experience and you can process a bit. The next strategy is called daily practice, and I can't stress enough how important having a daily contemplative, relaxing practice is to your overall emotional well-being. So when I work with clients, I recommend that they choose something, whether it's meditation, yoga, journaling, deep breathing, and set aside about a half an hour a day to focus on that. There's also really great apps on the phone and really good relaxation or meditation things you can find on YouTube. And as well, I also have a free meditation album that you can download on my website, which is christinabell.net. So I've been meditating and trying different meditation strategies for the last 6 years, and it has definitely been one of the most helpful things I've ever done for my emotions and just my overall well-being. So just to look at the overall picture of these interventions, so I put the daily practice and RAIN inside the window of tolerance because they're things that might take us a bit deeper into emotion, and then grounding and the 3 R's outside of the window of tolerance. Now we move to practice, and I'm a big fan of going simple and slow because I am famous for changing too much too quickly and then getting overwhelmed and then getting confused. And I think that a lot of change in life starts very slowly and takes a lot longer to get into place than we would like it to. So here's just a place where you can select the 3 things that you'd like to try or practice, and then to actually pick one item and design a specific plan for when you're going to try this out, and maybe even put it in your calendar. And also name one person that can keep you on track, because having an accountability partner is really important when we're making change. And I also just want to say that dealing with emotions takes a lot of practice and a lot of time. And some of us just have certain challenges. Some of us might struggle with more with anxiety or more with anger. And I think it's really important to be kind to yourself and to just keep practicing. And over time, the more you practice, the more you learn, gradually you'll start to see changes in your life, and probably your family member and friends will start to notice a difference as well. So thanks for listening to this video. You can go to my website, christinabell.net, to download the PDF documents of this presentation and also my free meditation CD. And I wish you all the best.